Ooh, that guy is management material. Oh, she has leadership qualities. We have come to believe that only those who want to be leaders deserve to be promoted, and it's hurting our teams and organizations. Shouldn't there be growth opportunities for individual contributors? How do marketing and sales leaders provide career tracks that don't solely rely on eventually managing others? Marketing and sales are full of myths, misconceptions, and even flat-out lies. Join us as we combat one of the most common myths in management.
Hello and welcome to the Rethink Marketing Podcast. I'm Colin Jeffries, joined by the intuitive inoculator of inconsistent incentives for individuals, the sales legend, Nick Smith. How are you this morning, Nick?
I don't know that I've ever been called an inoculator before.
Well, hopefully you'll be vaccinating people against bad management decisions. So I think it's somewhat appropriate.
All right, fair enough, Colin. Well, hey, I love this topic because we're talking about something that I've definitely made a mistake on in my career, and I see mistakes being made on this all the time. So do you want to set us up?
Absolutely. I think the big myth here is that everyone who needs to be promoted or have additional incentives must be on a management track. And a lot of people have bought into that, and it's hurt careers, particularly for those who are not ready to lead yet or don't want to lead, and for the unfortunate people who report to them. So the way that I look at this is managing others is a reward for people who are good at interacting with people, not necessarily for those who are really good at their jobs. You can be an excellent individual contributor who doesn't have to be on a management track. The challenge is that a lot of businesses don't understand that. So I hope in today's episode we can unpack some ideas and some maybe creative ways for people who don't want to or aren't ready to lead people to really get on an upward career trajectory and feel like they're incentivized, feel like they're getting better projects without feeling like they're missing out on leading others.
I love that because I think we're just hurting people by making them go into leadership in order to feel like they're moving up or growing. If you feel like you can't do that, you're going to be attracted to go into leadership for all of the wrong reasons. Oh, more money. Oh, more prestige. And yet really the reasons that you should be going into leadership are because, hey, you're good at leading people. You really enjoy coaching others. You really enjoy having a broader impact and working with people over time, helping them improve. And I see so many people go into leadership for those wrong reasons, and it's bad for everybody.
Yes. And I'll add on to that. If you think that, and I made this mistake early in my career, I thought that title meant influence, and it definitely does not. Influence is earned, a title is given, is the way that I would put that. So it's easy for you to say, hey, now I have 2 direct reports or 25 direct reports or 200 direct reports. Therefore, everyone should listen to me because of my title and my status. And the opposite of that is true. Really, what you have to do is get in and say, people should listen to me because of the influence I have within the organization, not because of the number of direct reports I have or the headcount within my division. And to your point, I think management often backfires. Now, I will say, if your objective is to become CEO or COO, it's really difficult to do that, maybe impossible, as an individual contributor. So understanding what your career objectives are specifically and the career objectives of those on your team can be a really, really good jumping off point, because forcing someone to manage others because they think that's in their career trajectory can often backfire, and that should be done very carefully. So things that work are starting with that conversation with team members. Do they eventually want to lead other people, or are they very happy as an individual contributor? And if they're very happy as an individual contributor and they don't want to manage others, or maybe they're scared of managing others because they don't have that experience, there are certainly ways that we can let people dip their toes in. Opportunities like managing interns, opportunities like, I've been in organizations where people who lead large teams step out on maternity leave for a particular period of time, and they'll have someone else lead that team in the interim and then return that team to the person once they get back from leave. And sometimes it's medical leave or something of that nature, right? But that's a really good opportunity for someone to step in, fall flat on their face, really screw it up a lot, have really good learnings, but it's not at the expense of people realizing, oh my gosh, if I want a better boss, I have to leave and go somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think projects are another great way of running that experiment or creating kind of a way for people to dip their toe into leadership. Give people budget a little bit of time for them to work on a special project, give them some dotted line responsibility so they don't necessarily have direct reports, but they have these indirect reports that they're working with, and see how that goes.
100%. And that's a really good opportunity as well for us to say, hey, Colin, you're really early in your career. You haven't managed people before. I'm going to give you this fairly simple project to lead. There are 3 other contributors on the project. Knock it out of the park. Next project you get, slightly more complicated, 7 people on the team with the project. You're in charge of it. There's a lot more nuance, a lot more leadership required, a lot more finesse. Knock that one out of the park. Okay, here's an even bigger, more complex project, a lot more nuance, a lot more executive exposure, a lot more decision makers involved, right? And the complexity of the projects can keep increasing. Unfortunately, for most teams, if the team is 3 or 4 people, it's not going to grow to 20 people over the next 2 years, right? Just generally speaking. So projects can be a great way, Nick, to your point, to help people advance in their career without necessarily adding direct headcount.
I feel like we're spending a lot of time talking about things that companies or maybe people who are already leaders can help their team, but maybe we can spend a second talking about for those people who are in those individual contributor roles who maybe have that thought process of I have to go into leadership. What can they do? Because I've made this mistake in my past too. Now I actually enjoy being a leader. I've built those skills, but I got into leadership years ago before I was ready for those wrong reasons. I ended up having 16 direct reports, didn't really know what I was doing, and wasn't as successful as I should have been or could have been. And so I think I could have spent more time really trying to understand what I needed to do as a leader. And I think I could have also spent time really having some of those open conversations with my management team and saying like, hey, here's how I think I can help versus just accepting what it is, whatever their roadmap was. You can really create your own trajectory. People think that, oh, I've got to follow this very regimented roadmap to growth. I think that's totally wrong. I think if you go out and you have those conversations and you paint a clear vision for what it is that you want to achieve, you make a case for yourself. I've seen people be very flexible in terms of how they shift roles around, reorganize things to really play to people's strengths.
Absolutely. I would say if you are in a position where it's your desire to move into management, let's peel that back a little bit and look at the core and really understand the why. Is it because you want a bigger title, or you want more influence, or you want executive exposure, or you think that's the only way to develop autonomy or to dramatically increase compensation? And any of those things uniquely can be done without having to manage people. Maybe you really, really enjoy coaching people, building into others, and actually leading. And if that's the case, then maybe management is right for you. But if all that we're trying to accomplish by moving into a management track is title, influence, autonomy, compensation, something of that nature, let's have conversations with our supervisors and department heads and maybe C-suite to say, hey, I really love what I'm doing. I'm really good at it. I don't want to give this up to manage other people, but I feel like at this organization, the only way for someone to really get ahead and move their career forward is to pick up additional headcount in their department and to move into management. What are some ways that we can devise, to your point, Nick, a career trajectory where I can get more complex projects, I can have more autonomy, I can increase my earning potential, I can give more to this organization and help build more without necessarily having to manage people because of these reasons, right? I'm introverted. I like the projects I'm working on, managing people is distracting. You have to deal with drama, and you have to deal with approving time cards, and you have to deal with approving PTO, and you have to deal with approving expense reports. Like if I'm hiring somebody who's the best engineer in the world and they're spending hours and hours and hours breaking up fights, providing direction, approving expense reports, having conversations with employees about sick dogs. Like, is that the best use of their time? Is that why I brought them in? Or would I really prefer to have them kind of siloed, leading projects and doing what I hired them to do? So there are two sides of this coin. And we're not trying to say that management is bad. Please don't listen to this and think, oh my gosh, these guys are really down on management. We're certainly not. I lead a great team. I'm happy to lead the team. I'm excited about it. But I recognize that not everyone has that exact emotional disposition. Some people really want to be individual contributors.
Totally agree.
So, from a management perspective, Nick, anything that you would recommend for leaders who have people on their teams who are really, really good, who they want to keep motivated and they want to keep well compensated and they want to keep engaged, but maybe that person doesn't want to lead into a management track? How do you think leaders should identify and communicate with that person?
Yeah, it reminds me of a really great book I read, Promoted by Bozy Dar. Highly recommend the book. And it was actually written more for those people, but less for management. But I think management can take some lessons from this. And what it talks about is if you want to get promoted, you have to have, what's your one big thing that you're going to be kind of associated with, right? What's the thing that's going to kind of set you apart, differentiate you from some of the other people on the team? And then how are you going to really, I guess, increase your value to the organization? At every company, there's certain things that aren't being done because nobody wants to do them, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean management, because typically there's a long line of people who want to be, in management. But if there's like a special project or there's this, maybe big, hairy problem that nobody wants to solve, I think giving people an opportunity to go and try and tackle those types of things or help them figure out, what's the thing that they're going to do that really makes them irreplaceable to the company. That's how you can help them grow without having to put them in that leadership position if they're, not of that disposition.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The only thing that I'll add to that is, as a leader, let's come up with ways that we can incentivize and recognize team members without necessarily having to have them recognized by their team. I've been at organizations where the only way that somebody got a pat on the back was from their direct reports. It never came from above. And if that's the culture at your organization, I encourage you to break that culture. Be the person who recognizes people below you. Be the person who recognizes your peers. It has to start with one person. So I think that can go a long way as well, because sometimes people just need that extra incentive of recognition. That's all they want. And if the only way to get that is by having direct reports, they'll get direct reports and then royally screw that up, as a lot of people do with their first time in management.
Totally agree.
Well, Nick, really robust conversation today. I hope we made some really good points. It definitely got me thinking about some folks on my team who may not want to move into management. Anything you would add to land the plane?
Yeah. This is kind of a cliche, but management and leadership are not the same thing. It's great because, sometimes those two things can overlap like, a Venn diagram, but management is based on positional authority, and it's all about kind of managing different pieces to meet organizational goals, whereas leadership is a set of behaviors that actually just creates influence and generates followers. And so there's plenty of people who I consider to be fantastic leaders who are individual contributors, but they have a huge following. A lot of people listen to them. They have a ton of influence, versus there's people who are managers who might actually be really good managers, but aren't necessarily the best leaders, don't really lead with influence. They might lean too much on their authority. So the two things are different. It's great when we can combine the two, but they're not the same thing.
I think that's a great point. The only other thing that I'll add is that career growth and upskilling can happen sans direct reports. Going to conferences, reading books, attending different classes, or just shadowing within the organization. What are the people in the roles that you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years? What are they doing? And if you don't know that, if I don't know that, there's an opportunity for me to go shadow those people and really learn from that, and to write down and to consider, what are they doing? What skills do they have? Maybe it's what dispositions do they have? What skills do they rely on to get things done? And if I can learn to do those and become a better individual contributor, I don't necessarily have to have a team. Learning to lead people and learning to do your job better, or the job of your superior in some cases, right? Those are two different skill sets.
Absolutely.
I think recognizing that we don't necessarily have to lead people or learn to lead people to grow in our careers is important as well.
Absolutely, Colin. Totally love today's conversation. I definitely got a lot of great ideas here. And for those people who are individual contributors or those leaders, let's think about that, because giving people the opportunity to grow up without having to grow out in terms of the number of reports that they have, I think it's really going to help everybody out. Until next time, keep rethinking those common assumptions.
I used to believe a lot of myths that hinder marketing.
And I bought into the classic misconceptions haunting sales.
Join us as we escape the echo chamber each week to shed some light on how to interpret sales and marketing advice.
Can't wait until next week for another episode? Visit rethinkmarketingpodcast.com to listen to our archives, connect with us, or request your very own limited edition Rethink Marketing t-shirt.
Until next time, keep rethinking those common assumptions.